You never quite know when things are going to go wrong out on the water. One moment, you're relaxing, enjoying an evening out on Lake Conroe with the family, watching some fireworks, and the next thing you know, you're being rescued because your boat was sinking. Just like some of the crazy scenes we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Australia, where this was the scene this past week, when lifeguards at Warrnambool Beach had to evacuate the waters, but not for a typical reason you might think, such as a shark or something like that being close to shore. Instead, it was actually due to the fact one of the lifeguards was out on their inflatable rescue vessel when all of a sudden they hit a rogue wave and wound up getting tossed out of the boat, and of course not wearing a safety kill switch lanyard, causing the vessel to run wild and causing beachgoers and swimmers to quickly get out of the water to avoid being hit by the vessel. Here we can see the aftermath where one of the other lifeguards approaches the boat as they try and get the original operator back on board to get it under control, but it is a terribly dangerous situation. As we see here, the vessel almost lands on top of the other boat with the motor running. Fortunately, at the last second, the crew is able to get somebody back on the boat and get the boat under control, but still just an absolutely wild scene to see. Our next story to make the boating news this week may look a little familiar to some of you, as the images we're about to view are actually of the devastating scene when the bulker vessel Wakashio wound up grounding on a reef off the coast of the island nation of Mauritius and eventually breaking apart, dumping over 1,000 tons of oil into the water, having devastating environmental impact to the island. Now, the reason we bring this incident back up today is after 3 years of investigation by the Japanese Transit Authority, they have finally released their results and findings of trying to determine what went wrong here, and the results are absolutely astonishing. According to the Japanese Transit Authority, on July 25th of 2020, the crew on board this vessel was enjoying a birthday party for a member on board. The captain, while at that party, decided to partake in a few adult libations. Near the end of the party, the crew decided they would like to get some cell phone service, and they had no satellite communications on board the vessel, so the captain and the first mate decided to take the vessel closer to shore to try and pick up cell phone service. Now, one of the major problems with this is this vessel was never intended to get this close to the island, so the detailed charts needed to navigate these waters were never actually ordered, so they were pretty much sailing blind. But to top it off, according to recordings from the bridge, they really were sailing blind, as nobody was paying attention to where they were going, as they were so preoccupied with the conversation of trying to get the cell phone SIM card activated that nobody even noticed the reef. It really truly is almost unbelievable to me to really actually fathom the thought that this crew drastically impacted so many lives on the island that was so reliant on tourism, fishing, and diving, all so they could get cell phone service. Truly an unbelievable scene. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Malta, where this was the scene just a little over a week ago when the cargo vessel Shippa Star began to list while at port. The vessel was in the final stages of being loaded and prepping for departure when all of a sudden it began to list as seen in the images here. The crew quickly realized something was wrong, and the crew was evacuated from the ship as a safety protocol as port crews jumped into action to try and determine the cause of the incident. The initial thoughts were that the vessel was quite possibly loaded wrong, as this occurred during the final stages of the loading process. But upon further investigation, the crews learned as the crew of the vessel was preparing for its departure, they had started loading the ballast of the boat. Unfortunately though, that crew member did something wrong and only loaded one side of the ballast tanks, causing the list that we see here. The list did cause some major concerns while at the port, as port officials were concerned that the cargo could dump into the water, or possibly even worse if the list continued that the vessel could capsize. But fortunately in this incident, no cargo reportedly went overboard and nobody was injured in the incident. And speaking of things going overboard, while that crew got lucky, our next crew not so much, as we're going to move over to Galveston, Texas, where this was the scene just a little over a week ago as well, when all of a sudden the Coast Guard received a call from a tanker vessel approximately 10 miles off the coast of Galveston, claiming one of their crew members had gone overboard without a life jacket. The Coast Guard quickly launched a helicopter and a 45-foot crew boat to the scene. Fortunately for this crew though, the Coast Guard's helicopter was already in the air and near the area, so they were quickly able to get to the crew member from the tanker Ghibli and pull him from the water safely. This is a real fortunate situation that the Coast Guard already had the helicopter in the air. The outcome on this could have been drastically different had they not had such a quick reaction time. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Alex Poot and Debbie Rebecki did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here. If not, we're coming to steal your drain plug.